Senator James Lankford released his watchdog report on wasteful government spending last week. He titled the report Federal Fumbles, 100 Ways the Government Dropped the Ball. Some of these are outrageous, I tell you. Keep in mind, this is our tax money, our paychecks being skimmed. Senator Lankford compiled the most ridiculous, the most absurd, the most infuriating government expenditures. Here with me now, Oklahoma Republican Senator himself, James Lankford. Senator, thank you for being here.
You bet, glad to be with you.
All right, Senator, tell me about Federal Fumbles. This is it's a pretty funny read, to be honest.
Well, I'll tell you, it's funny and painful both. We try to outline 100 different examples. It's by no means exhaustive of all the waste in the government, but it's regulatory issues, it's area where federal bureaucrats should have done a task and didn't, or it's wasteful spending on it. And we try to walk through multiple agencies, multiple entities, small, medium, and extremely large expenses, and to be able to identify not only here's where the problem is, but also here's how to actually solve this long term. So we put it into big buckets and say, if you were going to solve this, here's how to do it. If you're going to solve this, here's how to do it, and keep moving forward.
Right, not just the party you know. We have some solutions in this report as well. Senator, tell us some of the funny ones. What's the most outrageous, the most ridiculous one that you saw?
Oh, it's hard to be able to outline the most ridiculous. We've all got our favorites. My favorite is the NIH study that was done to test the development of children's brains by testing 5-year-old to 8-year-old children by sneezing on their food first and then see if they would eat it. So before they offered it to them, they would sneeze on it, then offer it to them, and then they'd find out if they'd eat it. It cost us $2 million to find out they wouldn't eat food that's been sneezed on.
Right,
there was a sea duck census. That's breakthrough research. I would have told them that for half as much. There was also the sea duck census that was trying to evaluate the total population of sea ducks, and so they did a testing method. But then they found out the testing method they were using was actually killing the sea ducks, and so now they put out a $200,000 study to evaluate a new way to be able to count the sea ducks that's not actually killing them as well. We spent $500,000 looking at 8th century graves in Iceland, which I'm not sure how that helps our national security, but it's also $200,000 in looking at old fish bones in Tanzania. All of these are issues about grants, and we just ask the simple question, why are we spending American tax dollars on that?
Right, that's absurd. I mean, I can't even think of a scientific purpose that would correlate from bones in different countries to, like you said, national security in our country. Senator, in total, how much money in this report did you consider to be wasted?
It was about $247 billion total, from the very large items like we dealt with the Medicaid process, which has about $140 billion in what's called improper payments, $30 billion in USDA and some of the SNAP and food stamp program that's mismanaged. We have $55 billion in legacy hardware from the federal government that is basically maintaining old stuff. Even part of our nuclear arsenal is still run on floppy disks. Obviously, that wastes a tremendous amount of time and effort and money, and it's a national security issue as well. Some of those very large and some of them very small. TSA spent $47,000 on an iPad piece of software to be able to point left or right. It's basically a coin toss piece of software, and then they hired staff to be able to hold an iPad up, and as people approached, push the iPad with and point to whether they're going left or right in a line to be a random left or right through the lines. Obviously a clear waste of dollars, but why they would spend $47,000 developing a program that's a coin toss program, and why they even ever put that in place or not, we don't know. It's now gone. But some of them are very small like that. Some of them are very large.
Right, and you'd think there'd be some people who make less than that who would be happy to do that job instead of spending that money on an app. That would be a good job created by government. Senator, tell me, though, what do you propose for the federal budget to clean up this waste? I know that that's one of the points of releasing a report like this, is to say, hey, not only are these the problems, but here's how we fix this.
Right. So we took large to small type issues. The big issue is we have to change the budget process on how budgeting is even done. The budget process was created in 1974, right after Watergate, to be more transparent in government. What it really did is create a process so complicated, it's only worked 4 times since 1974. So we're proposing a very different way to do budgeting so we can put all the budget issues on the table, provide greater transparency, but also a process to be able to pass the budget. This is the 20th year in a row that we've had a continuing resolution in government. We have got to get out of this cycle. The way to do it is to change the process. We also look at the grant programs. There's $650 billion a year in grants. Very little oversight. We want to be able to put a structure in for grants that go out the door. There's real accountability on what they're done, so we don't have a sea duck census and a sneeze food type grant that there's no real accountability for. And when we're dealing with duplication in government, there's no way to get a list of all duplication in government. One of the things that we highlight is we call the definition of insanity. We have 100 different programs in the federal government just on mental health. So we keep doing the same thing over and over again, 100 different times across the federal government. We have to resolve that. The only way that you can see it is to provide clear lists. We have a bill called the Taxpayers' Right to Know that provides transparency in government. It is a way to be able to get at this as well. So we lay all of those out from very large and complicated to very straightforward issues to be able to help solve these different issues.
Right, and that sounds sensible to me, and that would avoid ever having to go to a temporary exhibit on medieval smells. That was one of my favorites from this report. Senator,
Right.
Do you see any of this happening, this bill being passed under President Trump?
I do, actually. We've spent several years trying to build just the issues around the taxpayers' right to know, this transparency bill. We're very, very close to that. It's already passed the House. We work with this White House to be able to pass it. We hope to be able to pass it early in January and to be able to get that done. It'll take several years of transition on that, but we believe that that can actually get done. We believe this administration as well will be serious about trying to root out some of the bureaucracies of our system and to try to simplify that process. So we're going to work with the Trump administration, identify many of the areas that we've already seen. Some of them have been addressed by the Obama administration. Most of them have not. So we're going to try to address that with them and walk it through. Everyone can see it. It's online right now at lankford.senate.gov. And you can take a look at it there, but we're also going to work with the Trump team and be able to take it to them and be able to walk through and say, here's some clear examples of waste that can be victories right away.
Right, and I think I can speak here not only for my own pocketbook, but for the pocketbook of a lot of taxpayers and saying, I hope this does get passed. Senator, we're almost out of time, but let me ask you one last question. Speaking of the Trump administration here, what's the feeling in the Senate about Trump's cabinet nominations? Are you expecting any filibusters from the left?
You know what? There'll be a big battle on some of the nominations, but I think all of them will pass, quite frankly. You know that Harry Reid changed the rules 3 years ago and did what they call the nuclear option to dramatically change all the rules on all the appointees. So they're going to get to experience that. With just 51 votes, we can add in all these individuals. Many of these candidates I know, they're some terrific folks. Scott Pruitt, who is being tapped as Secretary of EPA, is a tremendous person personally, but he's also a very good leader. He's going to be a law and order guy. The big issue with the EPA of late is that they're not following the law. There's been 12 major lawsuits against the EPA of major rulings they've had. Many of those they've lost because they're doing things outside the law. Scott Pruitt's going to walk in and say, let's do the law, let's do the environmental issues. We want to be able to have clean air, clean water, but let's not go beyond the law and to be able to create something they should never do. So some good candidates like that I've seen already, I think are going to do a very good job.
Right, and I kind of like the idea of a man who's currently suing the EPA suddenly being put in charge of it to clean up house there. It's gonna be a fun ride once Trump is inaugurated. Senator Lankford, thank you so much for coming on the show, sir. It was an honor to talk to you.
Glad to visit with you as well.
All right, guys.